Now we would like to add a few objects to our plateau. For instance, this little log fountain here. Clicking on the fountain using the left mouse button will select it. Some objects may consist of multiple child objects, which are hierarchically structured. When we look at this fountain in the scene graph, we will notice a small plus symbol, which we click to open the hierarchy underneath it. We can see that the child objects log fountain water, log fountain jet, water trigger, and fountain jet sound are attached to the log fountain object. Therefore, it is imperative to select the parent object, that is the object which is ranked highest in hierarchy in the scene graph, before we make use of it. Otherwise, it might happen that we only move the water of the fountain, for example, rather than moving the entire fountain. So we select the parent object, log fountain, and duplicate it by pressing Ctrl D. Doing so will duplicate the fountain and all its child objects and will insert it at the bottom of the active hierarchy. As we move the fountain, we'll see that the original object is still in place, whereas the duplicate is now here. Scrolling up a little in the scene graph takes us to a transform group called Campground. By selecting this group, we will notice that all camping ground objects have been collected here. It makes sense to generate these groups when creating maps in order to keep a clear overview. Therefore, we'll first create a transform group under the Create Transform Group menu. This group appears at the bottom of the scene graph and is simply called Transform. Here in the Attribute menu, we select the group and assign a new name to it, for example, Plateau. We now want to gather all objects that are to be placed on our plateau in this transform group. So we select our fountain and cut it out by pressing Ctrl X. After that, we select the plateau group and insert the fountain using the Ctrl V shortcut. Although the fountain is turned into a child object of our plateau group, it still remains at the camping ground. Consequently, we can drag it by the arrows and move it to our plateau. As we can see though, this is quite a bit of work. There's another useful shortcut. We hold down the Ctrl B keys and click on the terrain using the left mouse button. As long as we hold down the left mouse button, the fountain is attached to the cursor and orients itself to the terrain. That way, objects can easily be placed upon the map. Now we get ourselves some bushes to have on our plateau. We choose this one from our farmyard, making sure to select the parent object from the hierarchy. We copy the object using the Ctrl C keys. After that, we select our plateau group and insert the shrub as a child object by pressing Ctrl V. By pressing the Ctrl B keys and the left mouse button, we can now place this bush on our plateau. If we would like to have more shrubs, we would have to duplicate each one of them and then place it, which is rather tedious. So here's another useful tip. Having an object selected, holding down the Ctrl B keys and the left mouse button, we change into Place mode. And now we can position a duplicate at the exact spot at which we are holding our object by pressing Shift. All these objects have the same rotation as our original object, which makes the bushes look slightly unnatural. Instead, pressing the Ctrl key rather than Shift will also create a duplicate. But this one rotates randomly around its y-axis, giving the objects a more natural look when gathered in groups. Finally, we want to add more variation to our vegetation. To do this, we go to the attribute sections of the corresponding bushes and scale the X, Y, and Z axes respectively. Make sure to maintain the same value on all axes while scaling in order to avoid unnatural effects. After we completed our work on our mod map, we save our work and can then play the map in Farming Simulator 2013.